Thank you, Miroslav. I have a few slides, but that's for the latter part of my talk. As chair of Ukrainian studies at the University of Ottawa, it is almost with a sense of filial duty that I am partaking this weekend in the celebrations of the CIUS 40th anniversary. In my younger years, I had a saintly great uncle who was a Trappist monk in Oka, Quebec, and I even got to spend a summer working in the archives of their monastery on the 100th anniversary of their foundation. It was back in 1981. I learned then that the monks referred to an older monastery in France as the mother house, la maison mère, where the original monks came from. Now, my chair may be far away from theology. Our friends from the Sheptytsky Institute, who, alas, have just left Ottawa, or alas for us, are covering that very well, but I cannot but think of CIUS as our mother house. Over the years, besides respect and cooperation, the CIUS has quietly made very concrete steps to help ensuring the durability of the chair at the University of Ottawa. In my presentation on teaching Ukrainian studies, I will be making 3 points. The first is about approaching Ukraine through the study of problems. The second is on graduate training. The third is on providing doctoral, postdoctoral, and young scholars, postdoctoral students and young scholars, with a research forum. Unlike other Ukrainian studies chairs and institutes in Canada, the chair at the University of Ottawa is focused on social science. I belong to a subfield of political science called Comparative Politics, which could be presented as the study of domestic politics understood in a comparative context. What this means, in a nutshell, is that if, for example, I want to study language politics in Ukraine, which was my original passion, I have to find out how the case of Ukraine contributes to the study of language politics more generally, and how the insights of the larger literature on language and politics, and God knows this is very large, not just in French in Quebec, how this larger literature help us understand the Ukrainian case. It's kind of a two-way street. This is literally how I entered the field. My interest in language politics during perestroika almost instinctively led me to Ukraine. And with the help of the late Bogdan Batsurkiu and of Alex Motil at Columbia, I ended up in a summer school run by a young man who would much later become ambassador to Canada, Ihor Ostash. Small world. This is how Ukraine is incorporated in my teaching at the University of Ottawa. As students, as we are trying to bring students, or students are attracted to Ukraine through their interest in a burning question of comparative politics. When I teach on political systems, the model of competitive authoritarianism by Lucan Way is on the syllabus, with Ukraine, to use an American electoral analogy, as one of the swing cases. Never know which way it could go. When I teach political violence, the Holodomor is the crucial case of a modern famine used as a means of mass killing. The war in Donbass has now made Ukraine a critical case of a very different type of political violence. When I teach on political memory in a larger course on identity politics, the Holodomor, World War II, and now decommunization bring forward a literature very interesting to a comparative audience. When we explore social mobilization, the Josh Tucker article on the 2004 revolution is a classic, raising students' interest in the colored revolutions, the so-called Springs and now Maidan. My students know that I am passionate about Ukraine, but they get to understand why Ukraine matters academically, not primarily because of its geopolitical importance, but just for its sheer academic value in terms of the study of problems. And here, if I can make a quick segue to my friend Bob Magoshi, I don't think Ukraine is Sweden. It does have a geopolitical importance that bring also students to the field. My second point is on graduate training. I have 5 graduate students working on Ukraine, 4 of them at the doctoral level. One of them is here, actually. Did our presentation, posters, and with a new round of applications for the cool doctoral scholarship, perhaps 1 or 2 more in the pipeline. Now, with half a dozen more students or young faculties working on post-Soviet or Eastern European topics, we periodically hold informal seminars to let students present their work. This is the upside of having a critical mass of students firmly or loosely affiliated with the chair, allowing us to build an actual community. Years ago, however, I decided to extend the model and make the chair part of a broader community. At the initiative of French colleagues, the chair got involved in the organization of an annual social science summer school in Ukraine for doctoral students. An intensive 1-week event, the school is not structured around lectures, but around the presentation of doctoral projects at various stages of completion, from pre to advanced field or archival work. We have 12 faculties and 20 students sitting around a very large table, and students get to have their project discussed for a full hour, which doesn't happen very often in academia, plus all kinds of informal feedback throughout the week. Significantly, the school is not on Ukraine, but in Ukraine. The common geographical area of cases is actually East Central Europe broadly defined, with in practice 35 to 40% of students working on a Ukraine topic. And each day has an element of what we call academic tourism, when we discover aspects of the surroundings that could be meaningful to our broad academic interest. In Kharkiv last summer, this meant visiting the OSCE monitoring mission office, or visiting the NGO Stansia Kharkiv, caring for internal refugees, visiting a Holocaust site, Drobitsky Yar, and museum, and holding a roundtable with local and foreign correspondents, some of them brought in from Kiev for the occasion, who have covered Maidan and the war. The school is held in a different city every year, in inverted chronological order: Kharkiv, Chernivtsi, Lviv, Mykolaiv, Zhytomyr, Ostrov, what was then known as Dnipropetrovsk, and Uman. That means there's, 16 more oblasts to go before I will see them all. Strong bonds are created, and in the last 5 years, I have ended up on the doctoral defense committee of 5 students whom I met for the first time at one of these schools. My third and final point is on a research forum. Since 2005, the chair has been holding an annual research event on Ukraine funded by the Daniliu Foundation in Toronto, and we call that the Daniliu Seminar. The idea was to provide scholars in the field, but in particular, the rising generation, with a platform to present the research, not in a panel format like this one right here, but a seminar format where they present separately and get the full attention of their peers and older colleagues for an intense discussion. Now, due to the extraordinary events in Ukraine, we had to alter the format in the last couple of years, but we are getting back to it this year. Essentially, the summer school adopted the Daniliu format and brought it to Ukraine, but with the difference that Daniliu is about presenting research findings, not early doctoral projects, so late doctoral project or people postgraduate. Counting the next one, which will be on November 10-12, the 12 years of the Daniliu seminar is providing us with a fairly representative sample of the changing field in Ukrainian studies, which excludes, since we are a social science chair, language and literature. A fairly representative sample of the changing field of Ukrainian studies, excluding language and literature. Our sample is 148 presentations by different academics. Several made repeat visits, but they are counted here only once, and discussants are not included. 33 non-academics, such as the 2 filmmakers who will present their film next month, are excluded, just focusing on the academics. Of all 148 presenters, you get actually roughly 40% from the United States, 30% from Ukraine and Canada combined, so the mother house and the diaspora country, and 30% from Europe. You see the interesting representation from France, Germany, Britain. And of all 148 presenters, 40% were doctoral students at the time of their presentation, 40%. Well, I don't have the data for young scholars who were within 5 years of postdoctoral life at the time of their presentation. It's probably another 30%. It's a very kind of young cohort. This unique database allows me to make 4 points. First, in reference to Mark von Hagen's comment yesterday about how political scientists have abandoned us, 50, I said 60 yesterday, it's 50. 50 presenters are political scientists, or 1/3 of the total. 3 of them engage in the kind of modeling or advanced statistical techniques that Mark alluded to, but they all know Ukraine very well, that trio. Political scientists are in fact a very important component of the area studies discipline that we call Ukrainian studies. The second point, however, is that political scientists are, quote unquote, only 1/3 of presenters in an annual event whose chair, me, is a political scientist and whose selection committee has been mostly comprised of political scientists over the years. Currently, it's 3 out of 4. The revelation to us is the rise of other disciplines of social science, in particular sociology and anthropology. It's obviously to study Ukraine, not to study the diaspora, where sociologists were very well represented, as we saw earlier. We've had 24 sociologists and 15 anthropologists, a little less than 30% combined. Even more strikingly, among doctoral students, we had, in fact, much more sociologists and anthropologists, 22, than political scientists, 13. And Frank will be happy to learn that we've had even more historians among doctoral students, 20. The third point is that from our vantage point as social scientists, the boundary between social science and history is becoming very porous. When I began the seminar in 2005, my general take was that we would leave history to our esteemed colleagues in Edmonton and Toronto and focus solely on social science. That did not last very long. 40 of our presenters, as I just said, has been historians, and just this year we are doing 3 panels on new books by Serhii Plokhy, The Gates of Europe, by a French historian, Catherine Gousseff, on the Ukrainian-Polish deportations after the war, and another one by a historian of law, Lawrence Douglas, on the Demyanjuk trials. Now, our starting point is the relevance of research topics for an understanding of contemporary Ukraine. And we are inexorably and increasingly drawn to historical research. This may be self-evident to historians, but it is real, and the upshot is that young social science and history scholars are engaging each other. The fourth and final point is the Ukrainian makeup of the field. By Ukrainian here, I mean that in a territorial sense, the relationship to the territory of Ukraine, not to ethnicity, which would be impossible anyway to compute. 53% of our presenters are non-Ukrainian, a slight majority. Of the 69 presenters with Ukrainian background, meaning a relationship to the territory of Ukraine. 17 are from the diaspora, meaning born or raised abroad. 25 from Ukraine at the time of the seminar, they're traveling from Ukraine, and 27 Ukraine-born but studying or teaching abroad. In other words, 3/4 of nearly half of young scholars in the field are from Ukraine, either traveling from there or being based in North America and Europe, showing that the field has been revitalized from two ends. The non-Ukrainians choosing Ukraine as a great field to study problems of global relevance. When I attended my summer school back in 1990, there were 3 of us. You could count 3 of us non-Ukrainians out of 50 in the school. Things have changed. So that's one end. And on the other end, the Ukrainians, in a territorial sense, as I said, were increasingly part of a transatlantic community of scholars. A near 50-50 breakdown is a natural equilibrium for an area study when the political regime in the homeland allows for an open academic exchange, which has been the case despite all the problems that Ukraine has experienced. This shows to me how vibrant, in fact, the field has become. Thank you.